everyone. This is Jamie Marbo-Nichols, and I am the host of the Heart of Dentistry podcast, where we take the ache out and put the heart back in to our dental profession. Please join me as I interview various guests who have opinions and also solutions to what is going on in our profession and helping us put the heart back in. Welcome, everyone, to the Heart of Dentistry. I'm Jamie Marbo-Nichols, and I'm your host, where me and my guest try to take the ache out and put the heart back into our profession. And I am so beyond excited to welcome our guest, Dr. Brett Kessler. And Dr. Kessler, he's kind of a big deal. We got kind of a big deal in the house today. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you want me to call you? Dr. Kessler? Do you want me to call you Brett? What do you want? What do you want?
Call
Sir
me Brett.
President?
Yeah, call me Brett. I'm a has-been. I'm not a big deal anymore, but I had a amazing opportunity last year to lead the American Dental Association as their president. I'm a general dentist from Denver, Colorado. Been in practice for 30 years, 31 years now. So
Yeah.
it's great to be here. I'm glad we got to do this after we met a couple of weeks ago in Orlando at Amplify Sober Voices, and
Yes.
really love your message and what you want to do and what you're trying to do, and happy to be here.
Yeah,
Hope I
me
can help.
too. I thrilled, and you were just you had kind of an impromptu ask, and that was to speak and kind of tell your story, and it was very humbling. You're just a natural at sharing your openness and your vulnerability, and that's all I can ask. I feel like I'm an open book about my life and what I do, and so when I meet somebody else that I can tell that they're pretty transparent, I tend to gravitate towards those. So I appreciate that. We are going to have a couple of different discussions. We're going to start out with the first one. And I want to talk about your time as being the president of the ADA. So you don't just go from being a general dentist in Colorado and then all of a sudden you're the president. So give us just a synopsis, 30-second synopsis of what you did and how your involvement, how long you've been involved with the ADA and how this came about. And then I'm going to ask you we're going to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to ask you some questions that I think that a lot of our listeners would be interested in asking you if they had this opportunity to sit down with you.
All right. Well, it's tough to put it all into 30 seconds, but I'll do my best to be concise. As I said before, I'm a general dentist. I practiced in Michigan for a few years in the late 90s, and that's where I got sober. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict, and I view my recovery as the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I love sharing about it because I know a lot of people are suffering with different mental illnesses, and basically if I can do this and get over it and become president of the ADA, you can too. And so I just want
I
to just
love
say
that.
that first. But when I moved to Colorado from Michigan, I had to answer some questions regarding my license about, my health, my mental health and addiction. And I answered them all truthfully, and knowing that I would be put on a kind of a monitoring contract where they would, do random drug testing. I'd have to go to recovery meetings, get a sheet signed, go to a counselor, go to an addiction medicine doc and things like that. Just so that the state of Colorado knew I was a safe bet to be able to practice, and that the public was safe with me practicing there. And so I was happy to do that. And about, I don't know, 8 months into it, I get a letter from the state of Michigan. It was a letter of admonition that I was being disciplined in the state of Michigan. I had my license active there. I kept it. And I called them up and I asked, what is this all about? And they said, well, you got in trouble in another state and you failed to report it. I'm like, I didn't get in trouble in another state. I'm on a monitoring contract here in Colorado. And they said, well, it's probation and therefore it's a punitive measure, and you didn't, report it.
Wow.
And frankly, it pissed me off because all I
Yeah.
did was seek help. Why am I getting in trouble for just seeking help? And a few months after that, I found that the Colorado Dental Association was doing it's called a sunset review, or every 10 years in our state, they review the State Dental Practice Act and update it to the current climate. And in the State Practice Act, there was a little clause in there that said if you were ever put on probation, you could never serve as a state board member. Now, mind you, I had never had any goals of wanting to serve on the state board, but I'm like, well, I'm, being punished here for something that really is ridiculous, and maybe want to keep my options open. But it basically, I joined that committee to help update the Practice Act, and it was the first time I came out publicly to leaders in organized dentistry about my past and how unfair this is and blah blah blah, and they were so supportive and welcoming with open arms. And they just kind of kept me as the well-being person after in Colorado, after I finished my probation contract. And I was the person now answering the phones and helping my colleagues find their way back.
Mm.
And that led to a bunch of other things, and I became an expert on treating a patient who is in recovery from substance abuse, and I went around the country speaking, teaching our colleagues how to treat this very difficult patient demographic. And one thing led to another. The ADA called one day and asked me to come to Washington, D.C. to testify before Congress on a bill they were trying to support that would fund dental treatment for people in recovery, specifically around methamphetamine. And so I got to go do that. And from there, I came back to Colorado, and they saw me as more than just the wellness person, and they saw the leadership potential in me, as I think I was the first person to testify before the U.S. Congress from the state. I was not involved in leadership really, and I was part of committees and things like that, but no aspiration to do
Came by
anything.
it naturally then.
Yeah, and they invited me to join their executive board, and I became president of the Colorado Dental Association in 2014. And from there, I was appointed to a committee on the ADA, and I decided to run for the board of trustees when I finished my committee assignment. And in my third year as a trustee, I decided to had unfinished business to finish,
Yeah,
and I decided to run for president, and I won. So
that is fun. So
that's
you
my
you actually, it's like running for president of the United States. You have to get votes from people.
yeah. I had to raise a bunch of money, and I had campaign professionals working on my behalf. I had communication professionals, communication team. My personal coaches were there. I had pods of people helping me with my campaign, locally here in my district as well as across the country. And it was a tour of the country to, just
Yeah,
get votes. And
all funded by
uh,
you and your campaign. This was not the ADA didn't help you with any of this.
no, but the people that believed in me and the states that I represent for my district believed in me, and it was very endearing. I was ready to fund it myself, but my campaign team said no, it wouldn't look good optic
Yeah.
wise. That we want to garner some groundswell and
So
get
this
the commitment. So
new, what did you call it? The every 10 years the ADA reviews the jurisprudence? No, what is it you call it?
yeah, and it's state specific. Excuse me.
Okay,
Every
that was my
state has
next
their own
question.
every
It's
state has their own dental practice act, and and there's not many dentists who are legislators of states, yet we're governed by this legislation. And so our job the Colorado Dental Association is to educate our legislators on best practices for the
yeah,
community and the practice of dentistry. And so that's what we do. And the Practice Act over time changes. We are the needs of the dentist and the needs of the community changes over time as the profession advances. And so it's just a scheduled 10-year deal. And most
yeah.
states have it. I'm not sure the specifics though.
Do you think every 10 years is good enough?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Okay.
very thorough, intense process. It took
So
about 2 years to do that.
you brought up something that I didn't even think about talking to you about. So
Uh-huh.
I now live in Florida, but I used to live out west. And my when I went from being a dental hygienist and then decided to start my own business as a coach and consultant, my very first client in the state that I lived in at the time, um, I caught him having issues on the job with drugs, over, abusing
Uh-huh.
nitrous, various things, and I walked in on them, and
Hmm.
I didn't know what to do with it. It was my very first client about 16,
Wow.
17 years ago. So I don't know when all of this stuff started. And I talked to a confidant, and I actually called anonymously, I thought, the state board of that state and asked them a few questions about what would need to be done. At that time, they said that if he voluntarily was to say that he has a problem and go to rehab, that he would still keep his license and be able to practice, but he would have a real strict guidelines and testing and stuff like that done.
Hmm.
He's practicing today. I've lost track of him. So that's what my question was, state by state. It just happened that Michigan was a little had a different. So is your goal, was your goal and is your goal, what are you proudest about with that? Do you, because you do believe people can be rehabilitated and they can. He was obviously causing issues to patients, putting them at risk, which it sounds like you didn't have any of that problem. But so what do you, I think because some listeners might have a boss or they might have a colleague or a coworker that they believe has problems and stuff. So it's state by state, but what happened, just to quickly backtrack, the state got a hold of him. They wanted to know initials and somehow they got a hold of him. They contacted him and I was kept anonymous, but just by our 5 minute conversation, they were able to figure out exactly who it was.
Wow.
And I thought this was confidential. So I kind of felt like I didn't get a chance to even take a breath. The state jumped right in and said somebody has called and had said that they're worried and concerned about you. So kind of give us, I mean, because I think that I did it because I felt I had a duty to protect patients and his team, to be honest with you. What is a suggestion that you would give to any person out there in our profession that maybe is worried or they have the problem or what? And I know it's state by state, but what would be your best advice?
Okay, so there's a lot in there in that
I
question, and
know. Sorry.
no, it's a really good topic to talk about, and because the last 25 years or so, I've been sober for 27 years, but the last 25 years or so, I've been an advocate to find ways to help our colleagues who are in this situation, and we're in healthcare. And we do everything we can to help our patients become healthy. Yet there's an attitude where we shoot our own wounded, and addiction, mental illness is a treatable. They're treatable illnesses with access to proper treatment, but with the punitive measures that are have had been out there in the past, I think it's getting a lot better right now. But the punitive measures basically would drive people underground and not seek help.
Now, yeah,
And
that's
and
basically the premise of my question to you.
Right. And the ADA has a code of ethics that talks about, it's unethical to treat patients while you're impaired.
Yeah.
And obviously, but it's also, if you know of a colleague that is practicing impaired, that there is an ethical obligation for you to find help for that person. And in the code of ethics, it says report them to the state well-being program, not the state board, but the state well-being program. Well-being
Oh, so
program
that's
is
very important to
usually,
know. There's numbers for every state that's called the state well-being in
mhm,
dentistry, or is it
yep.
or any profession?
Usually any healthcare profession, most of the states have through the dental association, have a well-being committee that can help people find help with dignity.
Okay, is there
Okay.
a national number or is it state by state? Because
Uh,
I'm gonna have that number put on the screen if we need to.
sure. I'm sure on ada.org/wellness that you can find the resources there,
Okay,
or
great.
through your local state dental association website. It's usually posted on their website. But in your case, I'm just going to take a tangent here, that person was then contacted by the state board. Most likely, if they were practicing impaired, you weren't the only one to call. And patients might have been suspicious because we're we get to notice our patients as they change over time, and the patients get to notice us as we change over time. And if something's not right, I've seen it happen where patients and would call the state board concerned.
Yeah.
And that's never a good thing. So anyway, um, and so I forgot where I was going with this.
Well,
What
I
was your
think
question?
mainly is how to get people from coworkers and colleagues and to not be as afraid of what it could
Mhm.
be and to really look at the bright picture that sobriety is out there for anyone. So think of, you're thinking about your patients and not harming them. And we have a code of ethics as a hygienist. That's how I looked at it.
Yep.
He was doing some very outlandish things, and what kept his team from what I was told calling him in is that they he had talked them into doing some illegal things, and they were afraid that they then would get in trouble too. So it
Yeah.
was kind of but I think the main thing is what is the one is if there was one bold statement that you could say to somebody that's listening right now that has an addiction problem, whether and if it is causing issues within their practice and patients, what would you say is something to help them feel like they could step over that line, come out from under the ground and under the dirt and be brave?
Yeah. So addiction is a treatable illness. Left untreated, it leads to death. And I can't tell you how many times I've fielded phone calls from colleagues, from dental team members, from family members of colleagues concerned about their person. And then for the family or the colleagues or the staff, the team to back off and say, well, I don't want to get him in trouble,
Yeah,
and then they end up dead.
yeah,
And that's the bottom line. So is that better than getting
yeah,
him in trouble, or him or her in trouble? Yeah, but no, it's not. And I think if someone's alive and they could get adequate treatment with dignity, like the life on the other side of addiction into recovery is the most amazing thing ever.
yeah,
And I've been able to live this amazing life because I was afforded the opportunity to go to treatment. And
yeah,
I could tell you that most states now are much more amenable and supportive of our colleagues. 82% of our colleagues are exhibiting signs of clinical burnout, and this is coming from our Council on Dental Practice at the ADA. And 82%, that's not that's most, that's
yeah,
almost all. Okay. And
yeah,
we high achievers, find, interesting ways to cope with the stresses. And sometimes substance abuse is a way to relax. And, marijuana is legal, alcohol is legal. In Colorado, psilocybin is legal. Ketamine is legal in some areas, some ways, so things like that are
real.
yeah. And they, somewhere along the line, it became more of just then it just lets fun unwind, and I crossed over a line and turned into addiction. And the problem is I didn't know it turned over into addiction. I thought I was still being able to control it. And it worked for a long time, and then it didn't, but I still thought that it did. And that's how we hit these bottoms and how we hit consequences. So and so my plea to someone, if you're struggling, seek help through the state dental well-being program. Seek help on your own, but seek help. Don't try and manage this on your own, because you will lose if
Yeah.
you truly have an addiction.
Oh, okay, great. Great message there. We're going to wrap this up and then we're going to start into part two, and it's going to lead from this part one of addiction. We're going to talk about depression and suicide rates amongst our professionals in dentistry as well. So, how can people get a hold of you, Dr. Kessler, Brett? How can they? Well, we're going to put all your information at the bottom, but is there something that's particular that people, if they wanted your help, that you feel you already mentioned that they call and talk
Yeah,
about their
I get
fear?
I get calls and emails on a regular basis. In fact, I got a call and an email today from people that were looking for advice. And so I ask you to reach out. You reach out to me, reach
Right.
out to another colleague.
Okay.
My contact information will be posted, so please don't hesitate.
We're so lucky to have you in our corner, and I
Thank you.
appreciate you. This is such an important message because this does lead now to what our next topic will be on. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Kessler, and we'll see you again real soon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jamie.
the Heart of Dentistry podcast, where we take the ache out and put the heart back in to our dental profession.